Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue our Sexy Vampire Retrospective with Patrick Lucier's film Dracula 2000. This was a special request, in fact, from the Facebook group. This is the second week in a row when we have done a chapter of our Sexy Vampire Retrospective specifically with films that have been suggested by listeners on the Facebook page. So Dracula 2000 was suggested by some of the lady listeners because they thought Julia would enjoy the, I don't know, I guess the world's first Scottish Dracula in this film.
I don't
Bear in
know that it
mind,
was
if
the
you haven't
lady
seen today's...
listeners, per se. I think it was just people who were thinking of me. You know, it could be men.
All right, fair enough. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. I think we should have T-shirts, actually, honestly, that say "lady listeners," you know, or
We really
actually, like an
Yeah,
auxiliary.
I'm with you.
It'd be like the Castle of Horror special auxiliary
No,
of.
no, just everybody's a listener. This is not, no.
All right, from Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the Alex Van Helsing series from HarperCollins. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth Studios, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire, and co-creator of Clockworks from Humanoid. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy! And in Los Angeles, Adam Foshko, screenwriter for the new Skylanders Superchargers, story consultant for Destiny the Taken King, writer and creative director for Call of Duty, Advanced Warfare, Exo Zombies. Say hello, Adam.
Hi tonight.
Outstanding. It's really good. It's really good to have you back. I'm trying to
back.
remember the last. What I don't remember the last episode that you were on. What was that? It's been a while.
I was up in Seattle on location. For a while there, we were doing. I think I was in New York one time when you were doing Ghostbusters. It was like, how many places can I be where they shot a picture that you guys were doing, and I could do a podcast from there? That was the game we were playing for a while. So thankfully,
I know. And then you went to like Europe, and you went to Europe, and I was lamenting that we didn't figure out a way to connect.
I know.
Dr. Fox, so we could have done, anything dealing with, any horror, any Hammer horror picture, but that didn't happen. So.
We've been doing all of this Euro horror, and in fact, next week I guarantee you we're getting back to Euro horror, and so yeah, it would be really cool to be doing like, Herzog's Nosferatu, and you're like actually in Munich at the time. Anyway,
Actually,
welcome.
that could happen.
Yeah, if we figure out what your last show was, you can let us know. So, all right, and finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, according to Wikipedia, Dracula 2000, also known internationally as Dracula 2001, is a 2000 American vampire action horror film co-written and directed by Patrick Lussier and produced by Joel Soisson and Wes Craven. The film stars Gerard, Butler, Christopher Plummer, Johnny Lee Miller, Justine Waddell, Omar Epps, Colleen Fitzpatrick, Jerry Ryan, and the lovely Jennifer Esposito. Dracula 2000, the promotional title of which is Wes Craven Presents Dracula 2000, builds upon the 1897 novel Dracula. I almost laughed to say that, but it builds upon the novel Dracula, with Count Dracula resurrected in contemporary America. The film was a critical and commercial, oddly enough, disappointment, though two direct-to-video sequels, both written and directed by Lussier, were produced. And I have to say, actually, I enjoyed the direct-to-video sequels to this, although I don't think I will make you guys watch them. So let's get our opening thoughts. Julia, it seems like we don't start with you enough, and also last week you truly despised From Dusk Till Dawn. This is a film of the same period. That was 1996. This is 2000. So why don't we lay it out this way? Let's go Julia, Adam, Tony, and then I'll go. Just like give us about a minute of your opening thoughts, Dracula 2000.
Well, I enjoyed this film only mostly because everybody in it is incredibly good looking. but also I didn't think it was awful. I didn't care for last week's film because it was so gory. That was the main reason. It's just disgusting, and this one just doesn't have nearly as much of that. I mean, it has a little, but very, very little. There's some humor in it. There's a couple of neat little twists. Nothing too sophisticated, but a couple of neat little twists. But mostly, I really like Christopher Plummer. I really like Johnny Lee Miller, both of whom have played Sherlock Holmes. I really like Omar Epps, who was on a show with Sherlock Holmes, the Doctor. So apparently there's a Sherlock Holmes theme going here. I like the females. I like the whole casting package, and I think it's entertaining. I mean, I just don't think it's it's not going to win any Oscars. I don't think, or I don't know if it did or not. I guess I should have checked that, but I don't think it won any Oscars. But if it did, it was for some effect or some other, but not for the script, I'm guessing. But It was fun. I enjoyed it.
All right. Okay. All right. Fun. Not demanding too much. That's. I think that's an honorable place to approach a horror film. Adam, what are your thoughts on Dracula 2000?
Let me be totally upfront. When I saw this movie in the theaters, I did see it in the theaters, I hated it right off the bat. Really couldn't stand this movie when I saw it. Now, and I really haven't seen it since. So I saw it again, and I will tell you that I agree with Julia that it has some interesting moments to it. It certainly it has a bold kind of opening. Sort of almost a little bit crowd pleasing in the beginning. It's formulaic, but kind of it moves along. I like about half this movie, the first half, because it's Johnny Lee Miller's in it, and it reminds me a lot of Hackers in the sense that this movie is to Dracula really as the movie Hackers was to actually hacking. It's very fanciful, has a lot of imagery sort of shoved in there. It's a little more style than substance. It kind of reminded me, and this is maybe a topic we can talk about, whether it had a Eurotrash influence or some element to it that just made its way in, because there's a lot of not just effects, but there was a lot of fanciful shots and sequences and looking through windows, and there's a lot of that kind of stuff that reminded me of some of the Eurotrash influence. And then about the time we get to actually the big twist, the big story elements they put in, which is Dracula's origins and kind of where he goes from there, and they lay it on with a trowel, it really does all fall apart, and it falls apart like you pulled open the curtains and the sunlight came streaming in, and it burst into flames, and it turns to ash very, very quickly, long before the... So, it's very true in that sense, but at least I can say that the vampires don't glitter in this movie, so I have to give it,
oh my gosh.
point.
I think Gerard Butler glitters just fine, thank you very much.
Well,
I forgot to mention him in my initial thing about the hotness of the cast.
Well, I had forgotten Gerard Butler was in it because, I just know him from, post 300. So to see him like this, I was like, oh yeah, I know this. And also seeing Nathan Fillion in a delightful Catholic role is very, I was sort of surprised to see him. And I just worked with him so recently, and I was like, oh, he looks so young. And it was nice to see, and Johnny Lee Miller, who I saw not just in Sherlock Holmes, but also in a production of Frankenstein, where he actually plays the monster, and they do it again, and he plays the doctor.
The switch roles.
What was the lawyer show that he was on?
It was sort of a male Ally McBeal. I remember that.
It was male Alex McBeal.
This movie is good about halfway.
Eli Stone.
Yeah.
Eli Stone, that's right. So that's it's kind of my thinking. I liked it way more than the first time I saw it, but it really is crazy at the end. It just all completely falls apart. But that's what I got.
Yeah. Very, very good. Okay, thank you. Tony, I suspect you're not a big fan of this film. We have never. Let me just say before you start talking, you and I have never discussed this movie.
Oh yes, we have.
We have?
Oh yes, we have.
I have
Because
no memory. I have no
know.
memory of discussing this movie. Okay. All right.
Yes.
So, okay. Rock on. Then go ahead. Lay it on us.
I am not as kind as Adam, although I found that I liked it slightly bit more. Man, I love heist movies, and so when I resaw this, and there's like the heist part at the beginning, I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's kind of cool." Yeah. And okay, it's got the Demeter. That was kind of cool.
Mhm.
Jeez Louise, never have I seen a movie, or not never. Rarely do I see a movie that has this budget and looks this cheap.
Mm.
Like it does not look low budget. It looks cheap. Oh, by the way, brought to you by Virgin Records. If you didn't know,
Oh, right.
like and any Virgin recording artist.
Is that the record store that they were in? I didn't notice that they didn't ever mention.
Yeah,
like,
no one always wore. Oh man, I mean,
she loves to wear her Virgin Records staff T-shirt. It is her her favorite.
Yes, while working there. And Virgin Records recording artists, brought to you by Virgin Records. Also, by the way, really like those cuts where it's like dun dun dun, Virgin working at Virgin. Oh, this is the best. Although it does have a Monster Magnet video in it, so I'll give it slightly 0.1 stars above what I normally would give. This is balls. I really, geez, man. This movie's a mess.
It's gonna be fun.
Enjoy it, and when I found out we had to do it, I was like, "How is this sexy?" Which is not really. And B, why? Was, I guess, better than Twilight. I haven't seen Twilight, but what I've seen of like Riff Tracks Twilight, this is better than that. But
okay,
man,
so again, the distinction is
awful.
Is it a sexy movie or are there sexy vampires in it? And there is no question Gerard Butler is a hot vampire, as are the women when they get vamped. You know, Jerry Ryan's hot. And what's her name?
Oh, what's the actress at the beginning?
Jennifer Esposito.
Yeah, she's all right. The other two women, they're sexy.
I
mean, everybody's got their own taste. I think she is attractive. The other two women don't really do it for me. That's not. I mean, it doesn't mean they're not attractive, but they don't do it for me. If that makes any sense. But no, man, I hate this movie. Like,
I say they are objectively sexy, but whatever.
No, again, attraction is just. It is what it is.
It is a relative thing. It's that's not a debate that would get us anywhere. All right, okay, well said. And we're going to return almost immediately to all of these issues. But let me just say, okay, my thing with this movie is my feeling about it now is very different from when I first saw it back in 2000. When I saw it in 2000, I was really appalled, because I was really into Stoker, and I was really into the identity of Dracula as the historic Vlad the Impaler, born in the 15th century, died in the 15th century, and then becoming a vampire, and the idea that Vlad the Impaler was Dracula from the novel, and so forth. And and two things have happened. Well, first of all, in this movie, this is like the only movie I've ever seen, or one of very few, to go ahead and go with a theory that Dracula did not begin as Vlad the Impaler, that he was something else first. That's a kind of a unique theory. You don't see it very much. And I was, at the time, I was really put off by that, because I guess I just wasn't ready to allow for any kind of other creative idea of what Dracula is. Now I have to say, it's kind of clever, because it's different, and also, well, I mean, yeah, well, here's what I think it is clever, because the idea of Dracula being the wandering Jew, which is this folkloric idea of one of the Jews who witnesses the execution of Jesus Christ is cursed to wander until the return of Christ. The idea that the wandering Jew is Dracula is a good idea. I mean, that's a pretty solid idea. Now this has almost nothing to do with whether or not the whole movie is any good, because we're talking about stuff that's revealed literally in the last 8 minutes of the film. But
Well, I
but
mean,
at the time, that was
he's Judas. He's Judas Iscariot, which is the other thing too. The Wandering Jew, or even a
right.
Gilgamesh. One thing, but he's Judas Iscariot.
He's Judas. Yeah, he's Judas with the story of the Wandering Jew, and that's kind of that was kind of interesting, and also all the stuff, and we'll get to it. The reveal, I sort of enjoyed the weird Lair of the White Worm style visioniness of it, but you could also say that it looks stagey and cheap. So it's hard to say whether it's intended to look like a sort of diorama dream, or if it's just the best they could do and it looks cheap. I don't know. I have to say, by the way, Tony, you're totally right. This whole movie often looks like an episode of Silk Stockings. You kind of get the impression hey, we're going to film in this hallway. Yeah, it's
Why do you hate
it has
Silk Stockings?
I mean, it does have a certain it can't look expensive. I don't know how much money they spent on this movie, but I do think it looks slick a lot of times, and that's cool. So let's get started.
I like the art
and work our way
of, like, the confident. Like there's good art direction in a lot of places. Like the whole again, the first like 30 minutes. Okay, cool, and then just pushes the yoke towards the front and just careens into the ground.
Well, let's start with that first 30 minutes then, because we open up. The movie opens on the Demeter. Now, this is a chapter taken straight out of Bram Stoker's Dracula. This part, is totally familiar. It's the boat that Dracula comes to England on, and they don't spend a lot of time, but they give this to us, and they don't have to. They're working really hard to connect Dracula to the book. The Demeter is the boat that Dracula stowed away on in one of his coffins, and then he killed the entire crew, and he got away as a wolf. And they even include the wolf detail, which is really kind of cool. I mean, in the way of showing like little paw prints that get away on the beach. And that's where it starts. This whole sequence only lasts like 2 minutes, but it gives you some motifs that the movie is going to return to, of Dracula being a stowaway, Dracula being invader, Dracula who gets onto vehicles and kills everybody on board, because they will replay this whole sequence in about 20 minutes when we end Act 2. When we end Act 1 of Dracula 2000. I also have to mention, this is one of the coolest sequences in the book Dracula, because since Dracula is told through all these different sources, there's like diaries and recordings and newspaper articles. There's a whole bit from like some local ladies auxiliary, who are writing to the newspaper about their concern over the wolf that was seen getting away from this shipwreck, because they're hoping that somebody can find this wolf and like take it into the care of the city. It's hilarious. There's this hilarious bit of satire from Stoker where he's talking about how the equivalent of our Daughters of the American Revolution are very concerned about the welfare of this wolf that turns out to be this serial killing vampire. But anyway, that we immediately flash forward to London, and now enters the next whole 20 minutes or so, set up the characters and give us an honest to God heist film. Tony, do you want to like sort of describe what's going on in this heist? You can smatter in the characters that we meet along the way, but it's basically a heist.
Yeah, well, basically there's the conceit that Van Helsing must have some cool stuff in his basement, and he's got this. So his helper, his girl working for him, sneaks her buddies in, which they have a whole crew. It's a whole crew. It's like a heist crew that has all the explosives, everything you need to perform a cool, successful heist. This part's neat. They break into the vault. There's vampire skulls. Oh no, we're clearly in Dracula Land because there's vampire skulls. Why wouldn't there be?
And this, just so you know, this like looks like this is actually an abbey, so called, that's underground. Like this, like apparently he has built his vault because he's rich
Yeah.
and he has a big, Piccadilly Circus uh, antique store. He has built his vault around this abbey, which I guess is somehow underground level. But
The Carfax Antique Company.
oh, right, of
Limited
course, it's called. Yeah,
appears to be basically on the grounds of an abbey, which I thought was clever and interesting, and I was like, okay, I like all of that. It all seemed like that was all pretty cool.
Yeah,
sure.
I loved I loved Johnny Lee Miller's line about how don't fuck with antique dealers. It made me laugh because I thought about Adrian Paul, like Duncan MacLeod from Highlander, who's an antique dealer. That whole scene was very Highlandery. Yeah.
I have to say, this whole thing, we were talking about the so-called cheapness of it, but the funny thing is, this whole sequence that's shot inside this antique place and in around, this shopping, it's not Piccadilly Circus, but anyway, this shopping district in London, all of this looks like European television to me. It looks like the episodes of Highlander that were shot in Paris and like, that 1980s the Saint series that the BBC had. There's kind of a whole sort of reasonably high dollar television production to all of them. Anyway, Tony, you were talking about the heist and when they get down to the vault.
So they break in. They're like, oh, where's all the gold? Where's all the good stuff that you promised? Because of course, since he's an antique dealer, he's got to have like treasure. I mean, it's a crazy vault, so they're not wrong for thinking that. And it ends up that it's a coffin, a booby trap coffin, no less. Van Helsing's alerted. By the time he gets there, they have busted the coffin out because that's obviously where he's keeping all his treasure, and he's left to try to track the heist crew down.
Yeah,
and and then this is where it starts. The beginning of where it just starts to just make crazy loops and
before you throw that stick forward, though,
plane crash. Starts
but
here.
before you push it forward into
literally,
the ground.
Wait, literally, there's a plane crash. So,
but back in London, so the people we met though, leading the heist team, Jennifer Esposito, who is one of the assistants at the antique dealers, Johnny Lee Miller, who's another assistant at the antique dealer, and Christopher Plummer. Now, what's interesting here is Christopher Plummer is playing a guy named Matthew Van Helsing, and they make a big to-do about the fact that his name is hilarious, and that his ancestor was actually named in Bram Stoker's book Dracula, which is of course nonsense, he says. And I just find this so bizarre and weird, this idea that these guys live in a world where the book Dracula exists. And so that Bram Stoker somehow, I guess, observed true things that happened or learned of true things that happened and wrote them into a novel, but kept certain things the same, such as the name of the name of Van Helsing. It doesn't even matter. The point is, this is the original Van Helsing. We're gonna find out later, and he's still alive. He's perfectly good Van Helsing. I think he's fine. By the way, I think
that's one of the little shocking twists is that he's not alive the whole movie, which I'm just like, wait, what?
Oh my God! Yeah, when we get to there, because first of all, I don't think they give him enough to do, and then later when he doesn't make it, I think it's because they have well, let's get to that because I think they're following a formula, and I think it actually doesn't really serve them. Yeah, go ahead.
It's hard to say, but it struck me. We'll get to it, but he vanishes so quickly from this that there's a part of me that thinks they only had a certain number of shooting days with him.
Yeah.
That was we're going to have to really give him an exit and not a strong way out because, as I'm sure we'll get to, Gerard says there's no, end to the depths of my revenge or whatever. And you expect, oh,
Right.
he's going to really take revenge on him in some way. And he really doesn't. You know, and
Right.
I think it just feels like they ran out of time with him, and they shifted the focus, which is part of it kind of all unspooling at about the 48-minute mark.
Yeah.
And this is about the time where it begins to sort of really do that. Along with, you know, and you got to mention the girl who's in the U.S.
Well, yeah. So now is the time. We cut to the U.S. After these guys break away. We cut now to New Orleans, where the lovely Mary, the virginal Mary, is living and working in Virgin Megastore, and she is having. But we meet her at first.
She was working at she was working at Virgin Megastore. How did you know that? Was that? Did they say that?
I like that they say it's New Orleans, but then also show you, like, just in case, here's all New Orleans things.
Oh my God!
Here's text, but also, by the way, guys, look at everything New Orleans.
Look at all the New Orleans.
Oh God,
things.
I am so tired of New Orleans things always having to have Mardi Gras. I'm like, why can't you just have New Orleans and not be Mardi Gras for once?
Because it's always Mardi Gras there. You didn't know that?
No, it's not always Mardi Gras. You know what? It is always Mardi Gras. So they don't need it to be always Mardi Gras. They could just have it be regular New Orleans, and it would be Mardi Gras enough.
Yeah, it's like Halloween Land.
Yeah,
in Nightmare Before Christmas. It's just
that's the hilarious thing.
Just everybody's just eating a king cake. Some people have beignets. Most people are drunk. There's beads. It's
Mardi Gras land.
How always there.
All the stories that take place in New Orleans always have it be Mardi Gras, which means when you think about any given Mardi Gras, there's probably like 9 or 10 very exciting stories of intrigue going on through this whole parade. You just kind of like couldn't walk
every year,
like 2 yards.
And none of those tend to have people like even this one. All this intrigue, and no one is lifting their shirt for beads.
Oh no, there's a girl who lifts her shirt, but she's one of the people throwing the beads. And I'm like, you don't get how this works. You're supposed to lift your shirt to get beads, not if you're throwing beads.
I like to see this now that you mention it. Like, hey guys, hope everybody likes February in New Orleans because you're gonna see a whole lot of that. It's just perpetual February. Like anytime a film crew comes in, they're like, "Wait, it's like a Groundhog Day."
Well, and if it's Mexico, it's always Dia de los Muertos, and if it's Brazil, it's always Carnival, and if it's like I think it's Chicago that always has St. Patrick's Day. It's like, can we just not have to, whatever.
I like the idea that all of these are somehow interconnected, so it becomes like a big city.
I love your idea of Nightmare Before Christmas. That's a great thought. That there's just all.
It's like the city and Babe Pig in the City, where it's like all the cities in one, except it's all party cities.
Exactly.
Partay.
Oh my God!
Are you going to partay? Well, of course, I'll be at Mardi Gras. Fine, meet me in Carnival. It'll be great.
Tony, I think you've just made my life like better because I always get upset about this, and now I can just let it go because I can be like, no, this is how it's supposed to be. It's
exactly. See, look how this fantastic movie has caused us to bond, and Julia doesn't have as much anxiety.
There you go.
This podcast is bringing it
all. That's what we do here. Is we just try to make each other's lives better.
Well done.
Yes.
Ta-da!
But yes,
we also had to watch this movie.
The girl Mary has been having dreams. She has visions of Dracula. That we know that because we know Dracula's coming. She's having visions of Dracula.
We now know also because of this podcast that many women have visions of this Dracula.
But she's having visions of a vampire, and
Gerard Butler.
they are reproducing the character, the duet of Mina and Lucy, the characters from the
Right.
original novel, and of course, this is 2000, so this is 8 years after the pretty popular Francis Ford Coppola Dracula, so everybody knows that pair, and so they're reproducing them here. There's Mina, now called Mary because Mina's too weird a name, I guess, and Lucy, which is not so weird a name, and they're
And they
hanging
both
out.
work at the Virgin Megastore.
And they both work at the Virgin Megastore.
Yeah,
Yes.
they do.
And they hang out, and Lucy's the one who's kind of more slutty, and all of that is exactly the same as it was in all the movies we've seen that track with the original novel. And so now we kind of see that
I just
they're
I just picture re-editing like Bram Stoker's Dracula, but putting Virgin Megastore signs all over London, and like just
That would be
repurpose.
hilarious.
And this is also creating this motif they have through the entire movie where basically different characters are reproducing characters who showed up in the original novel. So you've got Mary and Lucy from Mina and Lucy, you've got Van Helsing, you've got Dracula, and you've even got Dr. Seward, who will show up later when Mary gets thrown in the hospital. So and you've got the three brides, although we're not there yet. Anyway, so we saw Mary and we saw her friend. They're walking through New Orleans. We saw New Orleans. We know this movie is going to play into use New Orleans heavily. Now we go back to the airplane where the heisters are. They have their own plane. It's a cargo plane. They have the big cargo hold, and they have the metal coffin that they stole from the Carfax Antiques place, and they're just trying to figure out how to get it open. I love this stuff, by the way. I gotta say, this is still cool. This is, you can feel the plot going boom, boom, boom. We had the heist, and now they've got the thing, and they're trying to get it open. What's that?
Yeah, still the best part. This is the best part. I mean, really.
Right. They're, and they're trying to get it open, and hilariously, whatever's in the coffin is it's impossible for them to open it, and it manages to kill each of them sort of one by one without them noticing.
It's horribly booby-trapped. It's awful. I can't believe this is Christopher Plummer. This is Van Helsing that has booby-trapped this thing to kill, like horribly kill everybody.
Well, I mean on the plane. So for instance, when
No, but I mean in his back in his house even.
Yes. Well, no, he had completely booby-trapped the vault so that it, spikes killed people and stuff like that. And I have no idea if he would really do that in real life, but yes, in this movie, he's totally willing to completely slaughter anybody who dares to come after this coffin. Now, one way to look at it is similar. Well, I mean, you can think of it as similar to what happened in Salem's Lot, where they regard the arrival of Dracula or losing Dracula as something like a nuclear bomb being moved into the territory. He considers this.
I really kind of thought this was less about. I don't think they ever expected it was going to be robbed. I always figured that that all the other stuff, whether the coffin gets moved or something like that, the spikes come out. It really was about. It was about keeping Dracula in as opposed to keeping others away, it seemed. Otherwise, it would have been much more booby traps. No, listen, there'd be much more booby traps before you even get to the inner door. You know what I mean? It's sort of like...
Maybe, but...
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I think you should have had at least some signs saying, do not enter here because you will be killed. At least if you're going to be, like, electrocuted by a fence.
Only had a $28 million budget. You can really only do so much. I mean,
well,
they couldn't put signs up.
The signs were out of the
budget. Once you're about to go down and break Dracula out, all bets, you're kind of, at that point, you've gone rogue. I think that's why Van Helsing's all right with all that. He's like, I mean, if you're going to try to get Dracula,
they don't know it's Dracula. They just think there's a treasure down there.
Yeah, but he's
then they shouldn't be a capital punishment crime to try to steal somebody's treasure.
Well, I mean, and the real question is...
It's a treasure Dracula, hell yeah, it is.
Right, the real question is not whether or not this makes sense in reality. The real question is, when you saw it, did you go, oh, God, that's horrifying, or that's cool, or, because, I was surprised. I forgot that even happened. And I saw it and I went, wow, that's really over the top, but okay, that's cool. Those two guys, I didn't really know them. They're dead. Okay, moving on.
I tried to forget most of it.
But I mean, it was meant to give you sort of an impact because, again, I mean, I think what they were trying to do is they were trying to angle the thing. There's some clever bits in it here and there. I mean, part of it is what Jason said earlier about the sort of the reusing of certain characters and, this Carfax and this stuff is a nod and a wink to things that people who spend any time either watching these movies or reading the literature or whatever else, they kind of go, oh, I've seen this before in a bunch of other ways, but this seems a little bit different. Question is, what did they do with it ultimately? And my only real problem with it is that, had a setup that certainly kept my attention and kept my attention throughout half the movie. They didn't really deliver the rest of it for me. And what I loved also, they had that, I like to count these, conversations to be had with people who may or may not even know about Dracula or vampires. When you tell them that there are vampires, or in fact that there's Dracula that's chasing you, there's always that moment of what, or huh, or I'm gone. And it's interesting how you have that awkward moment, and then this is certainly no different. They had the Giant Lee Miller moment where Van Helsing comes clean and tells them that that Dracula was in the coffin or whatever. But it's ridiculous if you think about it in real terms. But I think the gratuitous deaths in the beginning, and even the ones on the airplane, set the stakes. The fact that everything about Dracula means business, and that Van Helsing meant for him to never escape, either by his own means or by anyone breaking him out. And it's a really serious deal. He even, has the puzzle ring coffin that you have to move around in different ways. But I will tell you, there's an awful lot of blood being soaked up by the coffin as people were, and weird, funny moments, which I have to admit were kind of okay. But the leech on the eye.
That was hilarious. I mean, all that's, and the fact that guy doesn't know, apparently that guy's literally never heard of anything involving vampires or coffins or anything. This is a universe where Dracula was a book that is reasonably popular enough that people still mention it, and yet these losers who are robbing this coffin, they don't know. There's never any even slight suggestion that any of this would be important, like this, these crosses that are all over this coffin or any of that. They're all completely stumbling through. But you raised a really interesting point, Adam, and that is how kind of and Tony, you called it on the heist, how techno-thrillery this first half is, right up until this point where everybody starts dying on the plane, and that still is the case, and the plane crash, that's still the case. Everything involving, really, I'd say until the point where the plane is crashed, is very sort of, this could be a James Bond movie, because after this plane crashes, they could send, the guy from Taken to go to the swamps and to go get that damn coffin, and there could be terrorists coming after him. We don't know, because so far this is a techno thriller. They've got high-tech heisters stealing this shit. They got a plane. There's a big fight on the plane and the plane crashes. Right now, this could be the Eiger sanction. There is nothing at all in this first half that suggests that the next 45 minutes
eyeballs, a retina scan. I mean, they have some
right, all that stuff. Yeah.
But they have the coffin that is soaking up the blood, and then they have the guy getting horribly killed.
But what that suggests is that after the vampires come out, they're going to still keep, we feel like we're still going to keep facing off against techno solutions, that there's going to be more gadgets and more. But what ends up happening... the tone completely changes. After that plane crashes, suddenly it becomes something very akin to Dracula, the TV series, Dark Shadows, the reboot, any one of those things about hot girl in a modern city dealing with being pursued, that kind of thriller, which is fine, but it is completely different from what the movie was for the first 45 minutes. that's just strange. It's really strange to suddenly have a complete shift, a complete tonal shift like that.
I was
I
doing a lot of yelling at the screen during the coffin scenes because I was like, why are you sticking your hand in there?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think it's trying to cover all the bases. There's a part of me that, say what you will about Dusk Till Dawn, right? I mean, I know that you guys did it last week, and I know that not everybody, Julia, was a big fan, but it really did one thing, right? It was like you got to love hate the Gecko brothers. They go in, they got the family, and the whole thing is get the fuck out. It's how do we get out of here? It does one thing, and it kind of does it by a certain set of numbers, and it has moments of where it's funny or it's over the top or whatever it is, but it does one set of things. This really tries to do a whole bunch of different things. Dracula's rebuilding his family, with the brides, and it's but he bites. He comes back, and then you've got the Van Helsing story. It's doing a lot. It really is doing a lot. There's a lot of shoe leather being expended in this movie. We haven't even added the Van Helsing subplot. We haven't added the Mary subplot. We haven't added a lot of stuff yet, or even why that's an important thing when it comes to Dracula. And then we deal with Dracula's identity. It's a lot. I think if it really had just been a techno thriller, and then it had one other major storyline, and they really had focused on that, I mean, this is fine. The movie's fine, really. But I think it could have been probably incredibly refreshing because we really hadn't seen a techno thriller Dracula thing before. If they really embraced that and with it, I kind of feel like there could have been more to this, as opposed to what Dracula 3000, The Apology, whatever that was. I don't know.
Dracula 3000.
I actually watched that and was actually pretty it was. I just remember I haven't seen it since then. Whenever I watched it before, and I was like, "Wow, this actually. Why couldn't this have been the first movie?"
Are you talking about Dracula 3 or Dracula 3000? Dracula 3000, totally unrelated science fiction movie with Casper Van Dien.
Oh,
Casper Van
yeah.
Dien
No, I'm talking about the sequel to this.
Yeah, Dracula 2. Those are called Dracula 2 and Dracula 3. Yeah.
Okay.
So before we move on from this, I wanted to ask Adam. Adam, weren't you on the set of From Dusk Till Dawn? Weren't you telling me that? And if so, why?
Yeah, that doesn't make me an unreliable witness, really.
No, I'm just curious. I want to hear your story.
I was working on a project in Los Angeles, living in Austin at the time, and Robert, also from Austin, invited me out. And yeah, there was a big strike in Los Angeles, and they were still shooting on the other side of town. And yeah, I was on the set. Actually, they had a couple different parts of the set built, and it was, it was weird and kind of overwhelming. It's exactly sort of how it looked in the film. It was interesting, but it was, we talk about low budget. I mean, that was I think that was probably less of a budget than this. I don't remember what the actual budget was, but Robert had this ability to sort of stretch a budget. So I mean, he put a lot into it, and it was all sort of his style. And I think part of if you think about that particular film, and then you think about this, it had a style. Dusk Till Dawn had a particular style, and you either subscribed to it or you didn't. And this seems to have a couple of different styles or several different styles that all sort of come together. I still really think, and maybe it's just maybe I'm using the vocabulary correctly, but it strikes me that there are similar elements of Eurotrash, of the dreamy things. Jason, you said Lair of the White Worm earlier, and that I thought was actually a much better way of putting it. But I had seen, a couple other Eurotrash horror pictures, and there were strange, surreal things that got used in the film, and that sort of struck me that this was running through it, as well as techno thriller, as well as sort of traditional Dracula, as well as Dracula's story in the modern time, as well as his origin, and then what he means to do now and in the future, and what the stakes are. It just struck me that there was just no single style to it. It didn't have a signature to it. Nothing I could really hang on to. But
Yeah.
Dusk Till Dawn was certainly an interesting set to be on. As probably as much as it was probably at least as fun as the actual film itself.
It's by the way, that the place that they had transformed from Dusk Till Dawn, was that out in the desert, or was that where
No, that
was it?
it was the northern part of Los Angeles.
I see.
It was on the other side of the valley. It was
Oh, okay.
literally a location. It was a Lowry's restaurant
That's amazing.
complex. It was just out in the middle of wherever. And
Yeah.
we were shooting at Renmar in Los Angeles. We just sort of hopped into a car and went out to the northern part of LA, and it was like you walked inside and you just wouldn't recognize any of it. It was just it was the inside of the Aztec Temple bar thing. I was like, oh my god. It was it was really interesting. It was the epitome of I'm used to walking around back lots and used to walking on the sets and things like that, but it's the epitome of when you walk through these doors, reality stops and you're in a new reality that's lit,
cool.
and there are and there are certain things. It's very arresting and interesting. But I mean, it was such a peculiar kind of set that it was every bit as atmospheric as when you see it in the film.
That's amazing.
It was a long
That's
time
really
ago
great.
now, but yeah.
Okay, to take us back to Dracula 2000, this plane crashes because Dracula kills every living thing on this plane. Honestly, Omar Epps, who we haven't really mentioned, dies. Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
But he also has to do it like the Demeter. Like they're like, oh,
Yes.
that's what he does. He gets on he gets on these things, ship, boat, jet ski, plane, Volkswagen Beetle, whatever. Ties people up and crashes them. But,
whatever.
Yeah. Lashes
It-
somebody to the yoke or to the steerage or whatever, and ta-da! That's what Dracula does.
It's
really hard to lash a guy to a yoke. I just want to say that. Having held a yoke before, it's really tough to lash a guy to a yoke, and the pedals just don't work when you're lashed to it. It's just weird.
He's Dracula. He's gonna survive. He's like, I can survive great plane crashes. Great. I love lashing pilots to things. The best.
I mean, once again, the notion of crashing the plane so far that I could still be down with that, because again, Liam Neeson could come after him once they're like, we're afraid that the plane went down somewhere in the Florida in the Everglades, or it's in the Okefenokee Swamp. Go get Dracula. Okay, fine. But all right, yes, he crashes, and the very next thing that happens is, of course, Van Helsing and Johnny Lee Miller come to New Orleans, and so now we're announced with the beginning of the next act, hey, this movie has moved to New Orleans now, and Dracula immediately starts making a bead for Mary Heller for reasons unknown, and there begin to be a number of different confrontations between Dracula and Mary, and very early, and if I skip over any, it doesn't matter, because we can just kind of hit on the general feel of it. What happens very soon after Mary knows that she's being pursued by somebody that she has been seeing in these visions, Mary meets Johnny Lee Miller, and Johnny Lee Miller gives her the story of this guy's called Dracula. He is a vampire. He hates all things Christian. And
you may know him as
the trowel, baby. The trowel.
Right.
Tony, what did you say? You may know him as what?
Alucard.
Yes,
I'm
you
glad
may know
that they
him.
didn't pull that. That would have been. I'm glad that they didn't pull that. I'm surprised they didn't pull that, but I'm glad they didn't.
There is one cool scene that I think I remember always when people say Dracula 2000. I forget all about all the techno thriller stuff, which, by the way, Adam, when you think about it, probably the problem is they only had the money to do as much of it as they did, and the rest is like, hey, the rest of this movie needs to be just hanging out, on sets and
Yeah.
yelling at one another, you know.
Yeah.
The but there's a beautiful scene where now only on the plane do we first see Scottish actor Gerard Butler as Dracula, and he first really comes into his own when he shows up at the Virgin Megastore, and just starts walking.
Oh, wait. Did the Virgin Megastore was in this movie? When
Yes.
did you? I didn't see it.
I thought it was Tower Records, but he shows up at Antone's Music, and he starts walking around, and all the women at the record store just turn around and look at Dracula, and so it's
And
this
all
presentation.
the women, by the way, all the women are super skinny, like college students. I think there's like a college campus Virgin Records.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is a fairly monochromatic and skinny selection.
Oh yeah, it's a very particular
Yeah. And Dracula.
All the cool skinny people know where to go to get their music.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where's that?
That's town.
Where was
And
it?
that is the Virgin Megastore.
Oh, Virgin Megastore. Okay.
Is
Yeah.
Virgin Megastore
Cool.
even? I apologize for asking this, and if you're listening and you work for Virgin and they're still around, I apologize. Is this
Still
store
around.
still around? I mean, does
No.
Virgin Megastore?
No, it's gone now. Yeah, there used to be a great one in Burbank, and that is not there anymore. Yeah, no, it doesn't exist. As far as
That's
I
too
know.
bad. Yeah, I mean there was a huge one. I remember there was a gigantic one in Grapevine at one of those enormous malls at the Grapevine Mills, which is this huge, vast discount mall. But yeah, and the Virgin Megastore was huge. It was a mega store. But okay, Dracula. This is the way that they've decided to present Dracula. Dracula is played by Gerard Butler minus about half of Gerard Butler. He is
Plus a lot of hair.
yeah, with big hair. It might be a wig, it might be his own hair, who knows? But it's
No, it's
big
not a wig. I don't think it's a wig.
and it's like producted out, and it's and it's flowy, and he's dressed like the Crow.
It looks like the barge. It looks like the barge.
By the way, here's a
Yeah.
piece of trivia. I decided to look this up. Virgin Megastores are thriving in the Middle East and yet are closed everywhere else, according to the Virgin Megastore
Not
site. There you go. But that's
So-
where you can find if you are in any of those
In
Middle
Dubai,
Eastern
I
Gulf
guess,
countries.
which I could sort of see maybe
don't
in
list-
Dubai.
Yeah. Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE.
In Bahrain, the Bahrain Virgin Megastore. I want a shirt from there. I can't imagine how that could go wrong. Should we mention now that Danhausen has kept himself alive for 100 years by injecting himself?
Yeah, I
That
suppose.
was actually kind of cool. I will have to say it. That's one of there are bits in here. Again,
Yeah, a bit.
he has leeches that he's attached to Dracula, that then he's extracted the blood and he's used that to keep himself alive because he figures he needs to try, because this Dracula is super immortal. Like there's just no way to kill him that he knows of, which is really weird when shit goes down at the end, but okay.
Yeah. Well, that's typical of any of a lot of fantasies like this. If somebody has superpowers and is super immortal, the only person who can actually defeat them is God. So in like Scars of Dracula, Dracula can control things while he's still asleep using only part of his brain. He can do all kinds of stuff. But when God has finally had it with whatever he's up to in the particular film, he's perfectly happy to send a lightning bolt and burn Dracula. And that's sort of what's going to happen here. But I just wanted to mention, in the presentation of Dracula that we were talking about, what Julia said with the hair and the oil, and he's got this big cloaky, capey kind of coat and black jeans and black shirt. He literally looks like the Crow. This Dracula to me reminds me... I'm sorry?
Really sexy in my opinion.
No, it's very sexy. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's this is the sexy vampire
Sure.
of the movie. I think that he is patterned most after Emile, who was the were-leopard dancer in Vampire Circus, where,
Oh.
with yeah, very, very much, very similar in the way that he walks with his shoulders, he kind of rolls his shoulders as he walks and stuff like that. That Dracula in this also has this tendency to stand with his chest thrust forward and his hands behind his back. I mean, but not clasped behind his back, but just literally flexed behind his back. It's a weird way of standing that he stands all the time. Gerard Butler is doing an interesting presentation here. By the way, I didn't know who the hell this guy was when I saw this. It's kind of funny that Gerard Butler is now, his movies hit or miss, but he's a household name. But
Yeah, I didn't know who it was either when I first saw this.
Yeah, I think this is even a couple of years before he did Phantom of the Opera, when he still wasn't somebody that we necessarily knew who the heck he was. We have the scenes with the Virgin Megastore. We have the scene that takes place basically when Van Helsing goes to check out where the bodies are from the plane crash is the first major action sequence. And so we have several of these action sequences with the vampires that involve, Johnny Lee Miller has the only weapon that is any kind of special effect or gadget, which is this big prop that shoots silver bolts. But pretty soon, the movie moves into kind of the last quarter, which is Dracula fixates on getting his hands on Mary, and he comes to capture her at her home, and Van Helsing gets there before Mary does, and this is what you guys were alluding to earlier, dies off screen. Mary comes home and looks under the bed, and Van Helsing is dead. And Adam, you were saying that you think what happened is they just ran out of time with Christopher Plummer. Would that work like this? Would you actually have to go, okay, Chris, we actually only have half a day with you left, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to skip these other things that we had plotted, and so we're going to film a scene right now with you just stabbed underneath the bed, and so we'll cut to that later, and it'll put a capper on whatever we had. Is that how it works? You're like, we run out.
Normally what happens. I mean, I have seen this once or twice. I think the best other example that I sort of ever heard from somebody who worked on it was Highlander 2, where they only had a certain number of days, with Sean Connery, and and they kind of had to be super. Usually, they know well in advance how long they have somebody, and it's possible that this is really how it was plotted out. Normally, do they not just sort of run out of time? But I think that they just kind of said, look, we need you at the front, we need to set it up, we need all this stuff, and then it's just not his movie anymore. I think they just used him for what they needed. Otherwise, I think there's probably a missing scene. Otherwise, what you have to say is that there's a scene on the editing room floor that we haven't seen yet. Like he opens his eyes at some point, and then there's a thing, and you realize that Dracula has taken his revenge on him in some horrible way. There's something that we're missing that just didn't make it in the final movie, and that's certainly a possibility. Rarely, I think, do you find that people just start getting written out unless it's Waterworld. But more often than not, things can be running behind. But very often when they have I think that Plummer was probably at this time the most, he was the star. I mean, he was the guy who was the most well known in this movie.
Oh yes.
I think.
Oh yes.
Besides
Besides
Jerry,
nothing. There's no one. Omar Epps isn't a star yet.
Wasn't Jerry from D6 9 sort of well known by now?
Jerry Ryan is a reasonable star. That's a good point. Yeah.
She was TV. She hadn't done films yet. This was her first one, I think. But those were the gets, and she wasn't in it very much.
Yeah.
But this is just one of those things that just felt like if it was an artistic choice where they said, okay, now we have to give Mary a reason to now despise Dracula or feel loss or do something, so we've killed Van Helsing, and she'll never rekindle whatever that was when she knows the truth about her past. That's one thing. Or, hey, look, we went so much time with him, and, the other thing you see body doubles, but like in Badham's Dracula, there were body doubles all over the place, but that was really more for Laurence Olivier's failing health, as I understand it, more than the actual budget or the schedule. So, I think that's kind of what that was about. I think that, whatever it was, I think it contributes to sort of a weird unevenness. Not that once you get past minute 48, you really stop counting. You just go, all right, just go. Let's see what happens next. But I would like to see how that would play out.
I was counting and pausing. Really? Oh man, 30 more minutes. Damn it.
I'm never getting this time back.
But I remember. Now since it is Sexy Vampire Retrospective, we will have to mention that there is like floating around, dancing on the ceiling sex scenes.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in this, right? There's a lot of floating sex.
Yeah.
You're
and
right.
So they're trying something there.
Yeah, when Dracula has sex with Lucy, so this Dracula is capable of having sex. So that changes from movie to movie, and he's having sex with Lucy. So that's going on, and she becomes one of the brides of Dracula. There are 3 brides of Dracula. He only has sex with one of them, and they are Lucy, Jerry Ryan, and Jennifer Esposito. We all kind of think that Jennifer Esposito is probably the most stunning of them, but it's cool that Jerry Ryan keeps a Southern accent even through being a vampire. And they are actually done away with. We very quickly get to the end of this, which is, once Van Helsing is dead, Dracula ends up facing off against Mary and Johnny Lee Hooker with Johnny Lee Miller. Johnny Lee Hooker is a blues singer.
That would have been an interesting section.
Now that would be something. Yes, you're right. If Johnny Lee Hooker, the blues man, she had like met him at a crossroads, and she said,
"Oh, whole other kind of sexy right there."
Oh, and then he fights
Dracula. Third act.
See, I want him now to fight Dracula.
Yes. He'd be like, "Why are you here?" And she'd be like, "I had a vision, I had to seek you." And he'd be like, "Well, I'm a blues man who's gonna go kill some vampires for you." That would be awesome.
I want the heist movie version of this, and I want the blues man version of this. Sadly.
Oh my god. I'm gonna go write the heist movie version. I have to go write.
I want to be in that because I'll help you with the writing of that because I think Vampire Dracula is the MacGuffin. Of a heist movie with multiple factions would be great.
It's a great idea. No, it's a lovely idea. Okay, so anyway, they meet up on a rooftop. Basically, it's Dracula and his brides versus our heroes, and Johnny Lee Hooker winds up facing off against the brides.
There he goes again.
I'm sorry.
Go with it.
I will edit that out. Anyway, ends up facing.
No, don't edit it out. It's hilarious.
No.
What's the character's name?
I don't know. British guy. He's called Simon. He's just called Simon.
Simon. Simon.
It's so funny.
Right.
Our daughters make fun of us all the time for always calling characters by their actor names if we know the actor names. So, we're always like, she's like, "Oh, well, who came in?" "Oh, well, it was Costas Mandylor." And they're like, "Who?" I'm like, "That guy there."
I don't think we've ever watched anything with our children.
Vampires.
I don't think we ever watched anything with our children that had Costas Mandylor.
Wow. Like, who the hell is Costas I don't know. He's like a muscular Aidan Quinn. It's hard to say.
I like that you're. I do like the idea that the kids in your household would be like, "Oh, well, muscular Aidan Quinn," and Of course, Dad.
Say no more.
Say no more. Now we know about this Costas Mandalore.
They'd be like, you mean that old detective guy from Elementary? No, not that I didn't quit.
The best would be if they're like, oh, from the live Costas Mandalore from the live action Fist of the North Star. Sure, Dad. Everyone's seen that. No one.
Oh man,
that is not an endorsement.
okay. We'll come to the giddy portion of the evening. We should probably get serious again. Yes. Anyway, so Johnny Lee Miller. What about him?
He kills the brides, and actually the best one is when he faces Jennifer Esposito, because he was in love with her.
He literally nails her. Nails her.
He uses the garden shears. She winds up with her head inside the garden shears.
That's when they actually kills her. When she finally really dies. No, I'm talking about before, when he killed some of the others, but then he just shot her with that nail gun thing that they had.
Yes.
That actually was a cool fight, though, when they go and say, hey, there's probably some vampires here. Let's go find them post crash where they're keeping the bodies. I thought that was actually
it was. And when you think about it, this is a scene that requires basically a small auditorium, and you're filming a little bit upstairs and a little bit downstairs. I thought, given that this is stuff that can be done on a lower budget, it's being Patrick Lussier, not a bad director. I mean, he's, he'll do the next 2 Dracula films really on a budget, and they're basically straight up action movies, and they're pretty good. And by the way, the lead of those is a priest who has all kinds of vampire killing gadgets. So he just decided, this is what this movie's about, is we're doing.
Oh man, the vampire killing gadgets in here were actually pretty cool.
Sure.
Kudos to the art directors. So even the dream sequence with Mary, where she gets vamped out. Really cool art direction. Sadly, it's in this stupid film.
So Johnny Lee Miller is facing the brides, and at the same time, Mary faces against Dracula. And so this is the point where Dracula gives us his origin story. It is we've basically been waiting for it. They've been laying in some details here and there to make you guess, but this is the big reveal.
He's obsessed with silver, and he's obsessed with coins.
Right.
And of course, they backed up a giant cement mixer and started to roll this stuff in a little while back.
She looked over at the Last Supper.
You hate those sandals. You hate those sandals. Why?
So much of this movie feels like a new term that I came up with a few weeks ago, which is honey baked fist. It's the most ham-fisted. The Last Supper? Papa, what? Oh my goodness! Like I said, I will give Dracula kudos for liking Monster Magnet, which I always will. In fact, he watches most of the Monster Magnet video. And they just
he really does.
And then he's like, "This is great." So kudos for taste in rock and roll. Yeah, kudos for taste in rock and roll, because it is, I'll watch multiple Monster Magnet videos. I have a friend who made one, Phil Mucci. I'm always down for Monster Magnet. I find it funny that Dracula takes time out of his day, his pursuit of Mary, to really be like, you know what? I was kind of, I don't know if I'm on board with this modern stuff, but if this is what's going on, I'm down with the 2000s.
But it's weird that sequence where he's watching TV and learning how evil the world has become very quickly, because he's slept through.
Evil? You mean rockin'?
You mean rockin', right? Exactly. But the thing is, we've seen. Well, okay, maybe it's an homage, but we've seen this gag before.
Yeah, but he's after something else. This is important, I think, to say.
Okay.
He says, and this leads us also to the end, he says what he's all about now, which is basically that he wants to, whereas Christianity hates all things that are Christian, and that God basically gives people eternal life, but with all these things, the carnal pleasures and everything denied, he would give the world eternal life and all those carnal pleasures, which is exactly what he's deriving from all the monster magnet imagery that he's seeing and everything else, is that the world is that it would embrace this and it would be great, which is really all he seems to want to do now. Is that it's not like he wants to, like in the end of other Dracula movies where he wants to do this or that or condemn the earth to whatever. I mean, this is he wants to apparently build his own. He wants to remake the world in his own image.
Yes.
In some way, and it seems like that these people would be, that we would be not just willing but excited about the notion of doing. We're halfway there already.
Yeah.
But
Which,
then
again, is inconsistent with the obviously he throws that in, but then he's got the pathos of being Judas Iscariot.
Yes.
Which is just like
I can get along with that. I'm fine with any super bad guy occasionally having an aria where they talk to us about their origin. I'm down with that. The thing that is frustrating to me about Dracula as a megalomaniac who wants to take over the earth or have a kingdom or whatever it is, the movies where that is the case, which I guess is all of them, never includes anything that Dracula does that moves him anywhere close to down the path of that goal. Dracula here has not gone straight to New York to try to take over, the Federal Reserve or to try to crash Wall Street or do anything that you would need to do if you wanted to start taking over. He's chasing a chick around New Orleans, you know.
I mean, they do. It's so convoluted, but they do try to make it make sense in some sort of way, because since Van Helsing was her father and he was using Dracula's blood, she's bonded by blood to Dracula, which would have been okay. He didn't also need to be Judas.
Yeah.
This is where
it's a lot of stuff.
Man, just pick a thing. Is it love? Is it turning the world into carnal playland? Is it bonded by blood? Any of these things are okay. We don't need 5 of them.
Yeah.
And the Judas thing is even more ridiculous just in how they show it with flashbacks, and then how again, ham-fisted they pull it at the end.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
With the really cheap looking this neon sign, so it's modern. Oh look, it's modern crosses. That's crazy, right? And he gets hung, but this time it works.
And then he releases her from.
Oh yeah.
But then maybe not, because at the end, she falls, so she hits the ground, but she's a vampire long enough to, I guess, not die.
Right.
And then he releases her, and then it's oh, she's human again. But then you get a flash at the end, which is well, maybe not. Maybe he's still alive, and maybe she's not really totally.
Well, she can hunt him now. Dun dun dun.
She's gonna guard him.
So why?
This movie
ends. So
yeah, go ahead.
All that thing happens. He, Judas. He was Judas because he tried to kill himself, and he became a vampire because he was cursed, and the rope broke, and he hates silver because of the silver that was given to him that he threw away.
Can't ride a bus because it involves using quarters. I mean, it's all
anything silver. So then he falls. There's a neon cross, and he gets hung. But why does hanging in sunlight work this time?
Well, he always avoids the sun, so maybe direct sunlight would have done it at any.
But then why didn't? That's again. Why doesn't because according to Van Helsing, he's super duper immortal.
It works this time because Jesus. It works this time because Jesus himself is intervening and going.
Yeah, I think you have
dude,
to.
It's time for you to come on home and let's just close this up.
Painted Jesus neon thing. That's finally.
I'm totally down with Jesus manifesting himself through, whatever he wants. If it,
No, come on.
No, I'm fine. I'm totally fine with the idea of the crazy neon Jesus. I think that's cool.
No, but it doesn't make any sense. If sunlight would kill him.
Oh my God!
Why was he?
You guys, no. Hey.
You open the ark. Yes?
Okay, I'm listening.
Jesus is not killing him. Jesus is freeing him. He's like bringing him home. He's lifting the curse. He's saying, okay, you can come home now.
I sort of get it, but I'm kind of like, all right. And then he releases her. I don't know. It's just.
Well, there's the point where they say, "Hey, you need to forgive. You need to be forgiven." He's like, "I don't want to be forgiven." So when he forgives her, is that the point where he's like, "Okay, man, you're good to go"? Is that what we're supposed to? And now he's not super immortal. He's only like, I can be destroyed by sunlight immortal.
I think it is literally.
None of this makes sense.
I think it's divine intervention, just like at the end of Scars of Dracula. God has said, "Okay, it's time to destroy you now." And don't forget, he got turned into dust. She is guarding the dust because we all know that Dracula can be reduced to dust, and then all you got to do is drop some blood on him, and he'll pop back up.
Right. No, I was okay with that. That was okay.
And by the way, this movie once again looks like a BBC television thing at the end where she's standing on a rooftop. She's standing on a rooftop like Batman, okay? And she's narrating about how she's now dedicated her life to guarding against Dracula and his kind, and her eyes shimmer because she has some mild vampire powers. I mean, so by the end of this movie, we're suddenly, oh, okay, so this was a pilot, and there's going to be more episodes about Mary Heller, probably now renamed Mary Van Helsing, and she's going to do her thing.
She even says that she's not just who she is. She's Mary Van Helsing. And yes.
Mary Van Helsing.
Show though, all of this done better in Ultraviolet.
I didn't see Ultraviolet.
Yeah.
Every bit.
Really? Great show.
It's a great show. Looks as expensive or more than this. Done way better.
And there were just more episodes. There's more screen time. Yeah.
So you're talking about the TV series. So you're not talking about the movie. You're not talking about the movie Ultraviolet.
I'm talking about the TV series, BBC show, Ultraviolet.
The movie was something else. Yeah, that was something else altogether.
Yes.
All right. So that is Dracula 2000. We should get our final thoughts about this. Did we start with Julia? We started with Julia, right? So. Yep. Yeah, and Tony, because he hated it, was last. So let's go Julia, Adam, Tony, and then I'll say. So Julia, final thoughts, Dracula 2000.
Yeah, I stand by my original opening thoughts, which are that it's a fun movie, it's entertaining, and the cast is super sexy. I think Gerard Butler's great. He looks so different than he looks now. He's still attractive, but he just looks completely different in this. And I think that it's a lot of fun. There was no point at which I was just like, oh my God, this movie is going on way too long. I'm like Tony, who apparently was counting the minutes. I just, it's silly, but it's fun.
Outstanding. Adam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm not changing my view on it either. I like about first half. I think is interesting, and it's kind of fun to watch, and you kind of go with it, and then it quickly begins to leave the rails, and there are too many other different things kind of going on, and the last half it's sort of and they're really trying to put a lot of stuff in, and they trowel it in, and it's a lot. In the end, it's fine, but I think the kind of movie that maybe it set out to be, or the kind of movie you want it to be based on its setup, is not the kind of movie that it becomes and that it is. And I think we're looking at just it's a very schizophrenic movie, and it's after something, but it doesn't quite know what it is until it gets to the end, and then you're not left with a whole lot. So, but like everything else, I'll take the ashes from this movie and I'll put it in a coffin and I'll add blood to it, and there'll be another better story later that will come out. Dracula 3: The Apology. But I liked it more. I got to tell you, I think that when I saw it in the theaters the first time, I really hated it the first time I saw it, and I think I have a slightly more of an appreciation for it, maybe kind of what it was aiming at. But it's not certainly the best one I've seen. And you're right, Ultraviolet does a great job of a lot of these sort of ideas, these themes in a much better way. But it's great to see Cillian, and great to see Butler, and great to see Jerry Ryan, and
Yeah.
these were it was really a slice of a time that and it sort of held together. Not heavy on my rotation. Thanks.
Yeah. Excellent. Tony, what are your thoughts?
So I do agree with Adam in that I hated it less, because I remember when I realized that this is the movie we're doing this week. I tried to think of what would be the podcast equivalent of me holding a thermometer to the light and being like, can't, oh, I'm so sick today, can't podcast, sorry. Because I did not want to watch this infuriatingly muddled movie. But I came to appreciate pieces of the art direction, which were kind of cool. And I do wish that we'd gotten more of the heist film version of this, because that stuff's cool. But holy crap, that last act is just terrible.
Yeah.
Just crap. I definitely, unlike Adam, who was like, well, this won't be in my regular rotation. If I never have to see this movie again, and I thought I had escaped it, I thought I'll never have to see this movie again. And damn it. But I will agree that we were looking for a movie that had sexy male vampires and had sexiness in it. There's a lot of good actors in this movie, and a lot of interesting choices as far as pulling a cast together. I mean, a lot of people in this movie are in much better movies, and that's kind of cool. And so I understand why, when we put out the call, why you would pick this movie. But damn it, I'm also looking askance at the podcast suggesters. I glare at thee for suggesting this one of all possible, But we did ask, and I think that's completely fair. And according to Julia, it definitely did what it was supposed to do. So, in that case, I think it was successful. But damn it, please don't ever make me watch this movie again.
So I just want to say that I wasn't. I think there was a lot of good things here. I feel like the first half, with the heist and the gadgets and the weapons, the much bigger budget first half is more exciting and sets a tone that the rest of the movie never lives up to. But I admired the fact that they went down the path of giving us a different Dracula that wasn't Vlad the Impaler, at least originally. He has a picture of Vlad the Impaler, so I think we can assume that somewhere along the way he assumed the identity of Vlad the Impaler.
He was definitely that Dracula. He's Dracula. So there was a time when he was Judas, and then he was, some other person, and then eventually he was Dracula. Because you go from the Middle East to Transylvania. I guess that's what you do.
And his name's Dracula. Right. And the name Dracula was borrowed from Vlad the Impaler. But I'm less, at the time I was kind of put off by it. Now I think it's fairly creative, again, because not many people do that, but also because it's become apparent from recent scholarship that Bram Stoker knew very, 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 very little about the historical Vlad the Impaler. So we needn't be overly solicitous towards his reverence for the true story or anything like that. It's just not necessary. I've come around now to the feeling that what makes a story good is whatever makes the story good, and I'm not as married to the notion of loyalty.
If only it had made this story good.
Well, yeah, you're right. Those questions are completely aside from whether or not this is a story that holds together, and in many ways, it doesn't as much. It could have been a heck of a lot. It could have gone a heck of a lot in many different directions that it doesn't go. Any one of which would have been fine. It could have been way sexier. Could have been way more techno. Could have been way more thriller. But instead, it kind of veers from one to the other.
Look,
hey, so we all agree on that.
To be honest, though, Jason, I think that's the big thing. Is the thing I come away with sorry to
No,
go
no,
back
no,
on my
please.
like
Please,
how
I'm
can you
done. So
make
please
a
go ahead.
movie again? I think it's cardinal sin, and happens. This is the worst of movies. How can you make a movie with a heist and a sexy Dracula and all these weapons this freaking bland
Yeah.
and muddled? It holds no, like, by the end of it, you're just like, yeah, that was a movie. Like,
Yeah.
that's the cardinal sin. If it's bad, you're like, man, that was really terrible. Or if it's
Well,
good, you're like, oh, that's good. This sits firmly in the middle where it's just infuriatingly like, yeah, I watched that happen.
well, you have to be able to embrace whatever vision of any of those movies is available for more than just the scene where you're doing it. So if you're going to make an erotic Dracula film, for instance, then it needs to be like Embrace of the Vampire or something like that, where there's all these scenes that don't have really, really fast pace because they're all about, hanging out and languidly sort of wandering around pianos and just all kinds of like, sexy movie crap where the whole thing is to sort of lull the audience into this hypnosis. Or you can go off and do like a Taken with vampires, right? But you can't do both. You can't like just go from one scene to the next. And yeah. I want to see Taken with vampires. I'm serious. I think that's a great idea. Y'all go write this heist thing. That'd be
Oh yeah,
Ocean's
I'm
11.
I'm I'm already on it, fellas. I gotta tell you.
Hey. Right together, please. If we're gonna come up with it on this podcast, damn it, I want to be a part of this, Adam.
All right. We should get our endorsements. I'm curious what you guys have been watching or listening to, or if you've even had time. Some people have been really busy. Joy, have you been at the airport a lot? So I don't know if you can let me know. But let's start. Actually, did we start with Joya? Was that where we? Yes. So Joya, do you have any endorsements for us?
Well, as you mentioned, I've been doing the immigration lawyer thing, and this week has been a strange week for that. So, or this past week, I should say. So no, I don't have any media-related endorsements. All I can endorse is that people be involved. I think I did that last week too. It's like be involved in your community, in your state, in your country. Pay attention, make phone calls, whatever's important to you. Be active because it's a crazy time we're living in. That's all I have.
Very cool. Adam, anything to endorse?
I probably would endorse something really modern, but I think we said a couple times tonight, and I just want to say it officially. Let me just endorse Ultraviolet as as a as an alternative, but just as in this sort of one facet of milieus that this sort of followed. I mean, I think it exists as a very interesting vampire story, modern vampire tales. I mean, you maybe just hadn't seen before. And if people haven't seen that, I think it's worth taking a look at.
Very good, very good. Tony, what about you?
So, I got a trial for HBO so I could watch this. And I wanted to see what else was on HBO through Amazon. Having a Roku box and having like the Amazon app and then being able to try out channels and stuff is really cool. Like for now I have Shudder because that's what movies we cover. Oh, so two things. Because I had HBO, I started watching Westworld so far,
yes.
And it's pretty rad. I've been impressed. I'm somewhere around halfway, and it's pretty awesome. Also, Sadako versus Kyoko, Ring versus the Grudge is on Shudder. So if you followed us and you said, "Hey, I'm going to check out Shudder," either through free trial or you just decide to pay $5 a month, we need to do that because that movie, as I said during Fantastic Fest, it shouldn't be as good as it is. Like when you say Ring versus the Grudge, it sounds like what? Oh, come on. It's so hella fun. And it's on Shudder. I just noticed that the other day when I was going through channels. So I highly recommend that. and also Westworld.
My endorsement actually this week is you can now order, this is complete log rolling, okay? But Eerie Archives Volume 23, there's some self-servingness to this because I wrote the foreword to this book, but it is also because of that I discovered it. So this book comes out in February. Eerie Archives Volume 23 from Dark Horse Comics collects a bunch of Eerie magazine from 1979, and it features this multi-part witchcraft story called Blood on Black Satin by Doug Mensch and Paul Galassi. And it is so, so great. So Eerie Magazine, if you don't remember, was a black and white horror and thriller and sometimes science fiction mag that you would get like at the newsstand or the grocery store or whatever, because this was a thing in the late 70s and through the early 80s where, you know, black and white large size comic magazines aimed at an adult audience was a standard thing that everybody would get. So Dark Horse has been reprinting Eerie magazine. And volume 23 is coming out, and I did the foreword for it, and I love it. So if you want to read my essay on what was great about Doug Mensch's miniseries Blood on Black Satin, that essay is there, and also the miniseries is there, and it's wrapped up in this really cool collection, which, by the way, on Kindle is $6.99, which is a great deal for a huge collection of comic books. But if you get it in, you can also get it in hardcover, and it's like full-sized and black and white and really awesome. So that's my endorsement for the week. Gosh, guys, this has been a lot of fun discussing Dracula 2000, a movie that at least half of you had some reticence about approaching. I was super excited, and I'm really glad that we did.
I like how you soft pedal. Reticence, yes, that's not outright hatred and dread, but reticence. That's good. That's fine.
Yes.
Alternate
So we will be back next week. We are finally going to be plunging back into the cool waters that I know and love, which is the 1970s Eurotrash kind of vampire stuff. So I haven't yet chosen what it is that I will force you all to watch, but I promise it will be grungy. And
Sorry, Julia. That's what that sounds like.
Yeah.
All of that preface
Yeah,
sounds
yeah.
like.
All right, Adam, once again, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. If you are
Good
listening,
having you, Adam.
and if
thank
you
you.
Always.
oh, we're so excited you're here. If you're listening and you have recommendations for us or want to argue with us, then come to the Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Please leave reviews on iTunes because it totally helps people find the show. We are once again so excited, and we want people to keep coming and liking the page and listening to the show. So have a fantastic week, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.